Right. Alive 7 attendees.
Great. So hello and welcome. Today we talk about GitHub Copilot, and this today is presented by me. My name is Darko Križić, and I'm being supported by Nick. You can see Nick. I think you can see both of us. I don't know. So as I said, the topic today is GitHub Copilot, and who am I and who is PRODYNA? So my name is Darko Križić, as you already know from the invitation. I'm co-founder and CTO of PRODYNA. PRODYNA is a consulting company. We are founded in Germany. Today we are pan-European. We are a consulting company. We are bringing customers to the internet. So our daily work is software development, custom software solutions, and infrastructure as code. Our strategic platform for doing this is GitHub. So we're using GitHub, we're using GitHub Enterprise, we're using GitHub Advanced Security, we're using GitHub Copilot. And this is the reason why we were asked to talk a little bit about GitHub and GitHub Copilot and our experience with it. Nick will stay in the background. He will monitor the chat. I cannot see it, so if there are any questions, just feel free to ask them in the chat, and Nick will read them so I can respond to your questions. Please be aware that there is like a 30-second delay between me talking and you seeing it. So therefore, we need we get your questions like 30 seconds later. So the topic today is GitHub Copilot, and I will talk a little bit about what it does, how it looks like, but the main portion today will be a live demonstration. I will be coding, and I will show you with this how GitHub Copilot will effectively support me in writing an application from scratch. I will start with zero. This is what we mean with from zero to hero, and we will be completely relying on the support of GitHub. You will see later. So, but very quickly, introduction, what is it? So it's your AI pair programmer. So you are coding, you sit in front of your IDE, and there is somebody constantly sitting in the background, taking a look what you're doing and making suggestions. And those suggestions are extremely helpful. It's based on the OpenAI codec or AI implementation. Future versions will shift to GPT-4, but basically, you know OpenAI from this ChatGPT, so the same company is behind it. It's a very powerful AI implementation. It has support for various different IDEs, and it knows a lot about different programming languages, but also different technologies like Terraform, for example. So some descriptive language that is used for describing infrastructure. And it supports you actively in your daily coding work. So supported IDEs are currently Visual Studio from Microsoft, same for Visual Studio Code, and the whole family of IDEs from JetBrains, namely IntelliJ, Golang, and I think that it's about 7 or 8 different IDEs specialized in different programming languages, whereas IntelliJ is the superset of all their IDEs, which I will be using today for demonstration purposes. And also NeoVim, which is a very powerful VI or Vim extension, which supports plugins. I'm currently also privately shifting to NeoVim, but I'm not that familiar with it, so I will be using IntelliJ for now. So how does it look like? So what you can see here is a Visual Studio Code screen, very familiar. So I see my project, my project structure. I see my actual code. And here I opened a window with GitHub Copilot and different suggestions for my particular question. So I started typing and I get different suggestions. I can pick one of them. This window can be turned on in order to see different alternative implementations. But normally, if I don't open it, it will show me just a suggestion, which I simply can confirm. So I need to open it if I want to select a different thing. So this is how it looks like in IntelliJ. So it's basically the same. I'm typing here my code. I can see suggestions. In this case, only one because it's very trivial. But that's how it looks like. So in both cases, it's a plugin. Here you see the icon. You can see it down here as well. Same on, not visible, it is visible here. Same here is GitHub Copilot, just an icon and running in the background. So basically you continue working as you're working now, with the difference that you have an assistant. And when you use it, it's basically just typing. So what there are some best practices. You must be aware when you work with GitHub Copilot, it is monitoring what you are doing, what you have done so far. This is the so-called context. And depending on your context, it makes suggestions. For example, if you reference to an existing function, it will reuse it. And one of the things that absolutely makes sense is that you simply start writing a comment, which is in any case makes sense if you're coding. So what I'm doing here, I'm writing a line with a comment like return the list of persons sorted by the given field. And when I type enter, you see this gray text is written by GitHub Copilot, giving me a suggestion for the method signature in this case. By the way, this is the programming language Go, which is currently my favorite programming language. So it shows me it would implement a function called sort persons, receiving a list of persons, a field with a string that controls which field to sort by, and this is the return. It returns an array of persons again. And I can simply press tab. And what will happen is it will take over the signature method signature. And when I press enter, it will again come up with a suggestion, which I again can confirm. And here I have my code. And this code implements exactly what I want. So it returns the list of persons sorted by the given field name. So this is basically how it works. And it's also really powerful in creating tests. For example, I just wrote down test the sort persons function. I would like to test it. I get a suggestion for this method called test sort persons, and everything else you see on the screen is basically written by GitHub Copilot. I just have to, surely it makes sense to take a look. Is this the code I want? Is it following my ideas? But basically, the work style is that you describe what you want, and GitHub Copilot supports you here. And also, just to mention it, if you're using, GitHub Copilot works, by the way, completely independent of GitHub. You don't have to use GitHub. You don't have to use GitHub. You can use Azure DevOps. You can use GitLab, whatever you want for storing your code. You can also be offline, as I will be in my next demo. But if you're using GitHub, you're most likely writing GitHub Actions, pipelines. And a typical thing is that you need to describe them, which is basically a YAML file. And again, it not only knows about programming languages, it also knows about technologies like GitHub Actions. So I also have, here's a comment, post the plan as a comment on the PR. And you can see the suggestion here, again, written by GitHub Copilot. So it helps me not only in coding, but also in different technologies like GitHub Actions, Docker files. I will show a Docker file demo later. Another example is it also knows about Terraform. Terraform is a very popular infrastructure description language. So I started here. Just a comment like create a public IP, and then it offers me this resource of a public IP for Grafana because I'm using Grafana somewhere, and it also packs it into the right resource group I already have called Camino in this case. So it basically works in very different technologies, including writing documentation. So we at PRODYNA, we rolled out GitHub Copilot company-wide. So every developer at PRODYNA, and not only developers, also people doing QA, people writing requirements, they also use GitHub Copilot. We integrated GitHub Copilot with our Azure AD. So everybody who wants to have GitHub Copilot is added to a group in our company-wide Azure Active Directory. People are using different IDEs, mostly depending on their personal taste. So it's Visual Studio Code, it's IntelliJ. And what we're also doing is we are exchanging our experience internally, and people really came up with really good examples how GitHub Copilot saved hours of searching for a specific solution, really by describing the problem, and suddenly you see a working code that solves exactly the problem you have. And we are using it for very different technologies. I mentioned a few, so mostly it's Java, JavaScript, TypeScript, Go, C#, .NET, Dockerfile, Terraform, Kubernetes. It knows about customized files, Kubernetes deployment descriptors, Helm charts. I already mentioned GitHub Actions, Dependabot, and this list is endless. It contains also HTML, CSS, things you do today when you're doing modern front end and so on. So, as I said, it covers nearly every technology, and we have rolled it out at PRODYNA. So let's start using it a little bit. I think this is the most interesting part. So I will be writing a small REST service in Go, and I will package it as a Docker application. And I will start from scratch. I literally have nothing. So I will switch over to my IDE, which I already mentioned is IntelliJ. I will open a new project here. I will call it just demo, and I'm pre-selecting that I want to have a Go project. I have Go 123, which is the most current Go version. And I just click on create, and what I have here is an empty project. And let's start using it. So as you can see here, here is GitHub Copilot, and also down here should be an icon. No, where is it? I don't know. So let's start. I need a new file, and I simply call it main.go. And I need to write down a package name, which is package main. And let's start very simple. Let's main function that prints hello. As you can see, those suggestions already come from GitHub Copilot. And this is exactly what I want. So I just press tab and press enter. And again, it suggests a method or a function in this case. I confirm. And again, a suggestion, and that's it. So now I have a hello world. Great. Let's run it. And it will probably work. It does. So you can see hello world. It's here. Great. Let's make a more complex demo. So I would like to, I mentioned I would like to create a REST endpoint that exposes some persons. Great. So what we should do is structure that describes a person with ID, first name, last name, and age. Age is good, so it suggests age. Let's use it. So what happens is it offers now a structure called person. Great. And now it comes up with ID. Great. First name, last name, age. That's good, but I would like to also have some with annotations for JSON. This is a feature of Go that you can, well, that's it. So I have an ID, I have a first name, last name, age, and by the way, this has to be uppercase in Go. I would like to have the ID as a string, and as you can see here, it has those annotations that describe how the JSON field should be named. And that's it. Great. Now we need a function that creates a person. So function that creates a person. And it offers me a function called new person, receiving an ID, a first name, last name, age, and returns a person. Great, let's use it. And now I also need a structure to hold multiple persons. Easy. structure that holds multiple persons, and it's called persons. And now, and this is what is powerful, it does two things now. It knows there is a structure already there called person, and second, it knows that I would like to have those annotations. What happened here, it took my person structure, created an array out of it, gave it the name persons, and second, it added an annotation called persons. Great. Now, we need a function now. For example, I would like to create 5 random persons. So let's do this. So function that creates 5 random persons. Great, let's take a look. So it's creating a new persons function. Okay, returns a persons array, that's fine. And let's see what happens. Sometimes you have this small delay, obviously thinking. We can also take a look what it would suggest. And as you can see here, it creates something like this. That's good, let's take it. So I will take it. What I could do here is I can refresh this. For example, if I have something like, I need something like a function that returns the IDs of all persons. Let's do this. So it offers this a get IDs. It returns an array of strings. Great. If I, for example, just have this suggestion here, I can do a refresh here, and now it shows me different suggestions, and I can pick one of them. Let's quickly wait for it. And you see it offers multiple. They actually don't differ much. This one is using append. All of them are good. I will take the first one. That's fine. So it creates an array of the length of the number of persons, iterates over them, extracts the ID, and returns this. Great. Now I would like to one example. I would like to test this function. In Go, I create a main underscore test. So same file as I have, just with underscore test. Test some functions. Test the get IDs function. So what I'm doing here now is it suggests that it's called test get IDs. So it's using this test framework from Go. And here is now my suggestion. So it creates persons by calling my new persons. It calls my get IDs method and expects that I get 5 IDs. Great. Let's run the test. And it works. Great. Okay, now, as I said, so we have persons. We can get the IDs. Let's create a small REST service. So what I'll be doing here, I need a router. Yeah, let's create so I call it. I will create a Chi router. Chi is a router implementation, and what it doesn't know. I mentioned already. It needs to know about contexts, and I would like to have the Chi router. So I start typing Chi, and here it is. So now it knows about the Chi router. It already found the right implementation. It's a open source GitHub project. Now it knows about Chi. And when I enter create a Chi router, here it is. So it complains. It doesn't know about Chi, but it should. Let's see. Now we have our router, and now it offers routes. And it offers now, for example, to have some route on this on slash add route persons that returns the the IDs of all persons, exactly what I want. And you can see it adds a route that gets all persons. And what happens is, and this is what I mentioned about the context, it knows what I already created. So it knows there is a function called new persons. It knows there is a function called get IDs. And it will now offer this. But it somehow doesn't, okay, yeah, it doesn't use my chi router. So I add chi, right. I need to download it, sync dependencies. Now it's downloading chi, and now it's here and working great. It offers now to start a server on port 8080. Let's do so. So listen and serve. Let's try what happens. So let's run this code now. There is a complaint about this. What's your problem here? Has to be called imports. We have duplicates. Okay, so let's remove this. And again, here is some confusion. Let's quickly remove it. And now we have our imports in place. Great. So let's try to run it. So run main go. And yeah, it's running, but I dislike some facts. I miss some statements. I would like to add a constant that describes the port, define the port for the router. So it offers a constant called port 8080. Great. And I would also like to do some log that the server is running with the port number. I like this. So it now creates a print line, printf. That's okay so far, but I prefer having some logging framework, and I prefer having a logging framework called logrus, and here it is, and I would like to import it under the name log. I need to download this library, and it is now here. It's not used yet, therefore it complains, and now I would like to log actually, and it's using my log framework. What also a feature of this log framework is that it offers something called field. So I would like to have it like this. And let's do it like this. Okay, so it's logging that the server is running, and it logs a field called key. And now start the server. And that's it. Let's run it now. Run. And you see server is running port 8080. So let's test it quickly. So if I do a curl HTTP localhost 8080 persons, I received a list of all persons I have. Great. What I don't like is it prints the persons directly. I would like to have JSON. So marshal the IDs to JSON. Now I get them marshaled. It offers also to do some error handling. And again, it knows that I have this logger, which offers the feature to log errors. Great. And what I also would do in case of an error, I would return status code. So it offers internal server error, and I return. Great. In case it works, write the JSON to the response. As you can see, I'm mostly typing return and tab, actually just confirming all the suggestions. So now I'm writing, and also set status code 200. And that's it. So let's try this version now. I restart, I run, I do my curl, and as you can see, I get a JSON. Let's pipe it through JQ, and you see I get a JSON response. Now, before I continue adding the actual, or let's add the actual function. Add, and this is the magic. Now, since it now knows that I have a person, I have an endpoint, persons giving me only the IDs. And now I would like to actually retrieve persons by ID. And look what happened. It already tells me add route persons ID that returns the persons with the given ID. Excellent. This is exactly what I want. So now it creates a route which has this ID and the path parameter. And let's see, it's thinking. And here it is. Here's my response. And again, it uses my Chi router to get the ID. I would like to add some logging. So log, log the request with the ID. And again, what happens? It's reading out. It's using the field feature I like to have in my log framework, and request for person with ID. Great. Now it's iterating over all persons, finding the right one. I dislike this a little bit. Let's remove it because I would like to have a function dedicated to this. Function, you see, again, it offers me a function that returns the person with a given ID. This is exactly what I need. Get person by ID. Let's change the signature. Find person by ID. And let's, yeah, looking good. Great. So it iterates, and if a person is found, it's returned. Let's return Neil if it's not found, and that's it. And let me simply let Copilot do the work again. Again, so the header looks identical, but it should now start using my method because it's here. You see, it's now using my find by person's ID. So this is something of best practice. Start writing methods you know you will be needing later, and Copilot will pick them up and start using them. And again, it's following my practice about how I do error handling. It again wrote a status code. So I just have to actually show it things once. And if I have similar things, it will do them identically. And again, I'm writing this as JSON, and I'm writing this as a header. This yellow one means I would need to add some error handling here. I mean, this is not an example for best coding style. I will restart it now. And something is wrong. Let me quickly find the wrong line. It's possibly, yeah, I need to close this function, and let's restart it. So it's now running. Let's test it. And so let's see if this part is working, right? Let's load person number 1, and here it is. And that's it. So I wrote a REST endpoint, and as you can see, it works. I would also like, let's quickly add a test for, you see, it offers test the find persons by ID function. Great, let's do it. Yeah. And so it creates new persons. It looks for person 1 and expects that it looks up for the person ID. Okay, that's that could be improved, but it's basically a test. And let's run it, and you can see both tests are working fine. So you see, take a look at this result. I not only have working code, I also have well-documented code, and I have code where the documentation fits to the code because the code is derived from the documentation. So this gives me high quality code, and as you can see, how much time did I spend? And all the time I would need to Google or look up in Stack Overflow I don't need this time anymore. I can concentrate on my coding because this is exactly what Copilot supports me. I just have to describe what I want, and it finds existing code and aligns it to my needs, and that's how it works. Now, last part of the demo, I would like to package this as a Docker container. So I need to write a Docker file, and let's do something fancy. I would like to have a multi-stage build. Multi-stage build is the first part of Docker is building it for me, and the second part is actually only containing the runtime. So let's describe it. Multi-stage build of the Go application. And look what happens. It knows about stage 1, build the application. Exactly. It doesn't do anything, okay, but I need a from, and yeah, so it's pulling Golang, but not the newest version. Okay, let's use Golang 120 as builder, and now install Git. This is true. If I do this, I need to install Git because all the dependencies are actually downloaded using Git. Set the current working directory. Yeah, app is fine. Then copy the mod and some files. Yeah, this is exactly what I need to do every time. Now download all dependencies by running go mod download. Exactly. And now copy the sources from the current directory into the working directory. Yes, this is what I need. And last step is to build. Great. Yeah. You see, this is exactly what I need. Stage 2 is now run the application. So I'm taking an empty Alpine image. Great. And install. No, I don't need this. Copy the pre-built binary file from the previous stage. Yes. Expose port 8080. Yes, this is magic. It knows it's port 8080. Great, expose it. And now command to run the executable, which is now /main, and that's it. So we are done. So we have written a Docker file, which actually compiles the application and it creates it. Let's try it. Let's try it. It's amazing. So I have now this Docker file in my local directory. So what I do is a Docker build dot current directory. I tag it with demo latest. So let's do it. I need to connect to my Docker. So now let's build it. And yeah, so it's pulling now the images. Yeah, needs some longer time if it's happening for the first time. It's building, and that's it. So if I do Docker images, I see that there is grep demo. You see there is a demo image latest built 9 seconds ago, and let's run it. I mean, you see in the history, I did this already for preparation, but as I said, I started from scratch, and scratch means there was no context. I created the context, and I will run it now. So demo latest, and as you can see, it's up and running. So in summary, what did I do? I created a REST service. I actually coded nothing. I just wrote some descriptions I want to have. And as a summary, as you can see, GitHub Copilot supported me on this tactical level. So I need a function here, I need this functionality there. What GitHub Copilot doesn't offer to me is some strategic things like which files do I need, how do I structure my whole project. I mean, this will surely come over time, but people are asking like, will I lose my job as a coder? The short answer is no, because there's still somebody needs to be there who understands what needs to be done. Copilot will support me in writing and implementing the actual code, but I still have to describe it somehow by writing comments, by taking a look on the suggestions. So it supports me massively, but it doesn't take over my job. I still need to do what I need to do. And that's it. Let's quickly count the line numbers. So if I do, so what I did is, you see Mango is 117 lines, test 23 lines, Docker file 35. So I wrote 175 lines of code in a few minutes. And as you can see, from 0 to hero, and it works. And I find this really amazing. Back to the slides. So what's our experience now? So our developers love it. And happy developers are good developers. Really, we have people coding all day, and then we decided, let's roll out Copilot simply as a support, and people are using it, and it's really amazing and extremely good feedback. And as I said, we have happy developers also because of Copilot. We have a massive improvement on coding speed. And I think you understand what I mean by massive, because if I know how to use it properly, I write comments, I describe my intention, I read suggestions, I maybe correct a suggestion, but whatever I do, it supports me massively. And what it takes from me is this, I would say this, for example, if you take a look on this algorithmic code, like things like this, it's error prone, right? And I could also make more complex things like sort persons by last name, for example. And you see, this happens sometimes, that it simply doesn't want. Let's try again. Sort, first I want to have a receiver function that returns all persons sorted by the last name. So great, and hopefully, no, now it declines. Let's make it even more complex by given field, right? So it's sort by, yeah, okay. Now, as you can see, it suggests let's write methods that actually implement the sorting of the different fields, which, okay. Receiver function that sorts persons by last name. You see it's called sort by last name. And again, here's some example. And this is one of the methods he was requesting. Now it's here. And you see this code is error prone if I write this by hand. But on the other hand, you see it's here, it works. I can verify it by creating a test. And that's it, no big effort here. So it helps me on the repetitive tasks, and surely there is a moment when I do some Googling or Stack Overflows, but I very seldom have to do things like this because it does it for me. This is what I mentioned already, I have documentation in my code because I start coding by writing documents. You know what, most developers know exactly what I mean when I say you don't end up with some maybe working code which has zero documentation because the coder wrote it and knowing what he even what he's doing, but you know how it is when you write code, you know how it works, and maybe God knows how it works, but after a year, only God knows how it works. So it's a good thing that there is a documentation and some comments, and this is so this comes by using Copilot. And also an important thing is nothing is worse than wrong documentation, but this documentation fits to the code because it's actually doing what I described there. It's reducing boring work. I just showed an example, like writing some sorting algorithm, and also very boring is writing tests, but this is exactly what it does. Depending on the complexity of your methods, it really creates big things and tests all use cases and edge cases automatically. So it really supports me massively here. And as I already mentioned, it supports me on tactical level, less on a strategic level. And the order matters. So as you have seen, so when I describe something like there is a person structure, it started using it. There is a person's structure, it started using it. There is a method getting all the IDs, it started using it. So this means you need to think about or doing things like bottom up a little bit. If you start with your router first, yeah, it knows to add routes, but it would create inline code. So therefore, it simply makes sense. Let's start with the structures first, with the functions first, with the low-level functions first, and then the high-level functions. And then in the end, you just sum up everything. And this is, you have to have some awareness of the context. And by the way, the context are the 20 last opened tabs in your IDE. So back to my IDE, I have 3 files here. So those are the files, or this is the context that Copilot knows when it's doing suggestions. So it's the last 20 ones. If you have a huge project, it possibly doesn't know everything. So the last 20 open files, this is a technical detail that I got from some Copilot developers. And good to know it's not really documented somewhere publicly, but good to have an understanding what the context is. It's not your whole project. And yeah, your existing code. A few words about data privacy. This is frequently asked question number 1. So how does it work and what happens with my code? So technically, what surely happens is your code and your snippets are transferred to GitHub. They're processed at GitHub, and then you receive your recommendation or your recommendations, and this code is disposed. This is all well documented in the GitHub Copilot for Business privacy statement. So you can scan the QR code here, or it's easily findable via Google, where this is described. So what I have here is a summary of the statements over there. And this data processing happens in USA. So we surely always consider data privacy. What we do is we have customers and we explain them that we would like to use GitHub Copilot, which definitely brings them advantages. We can code faster, we get our results quicker. And what we do is we explain the customers, look, this is the official privacy statement from GitHub, and everything is explained here. If you don't agree, we will disable GitHub Copilot for your project. Every developer will disable it. If you agree, we will keep it turned on and we will be using it. So it's full transparency to the customer. So he knows that his code snippets are transferred and processed in the US. So most of our customers are cool with it. So we are coding for European Union GDPR customers because, for example, GDPR is about data protection, especially personal data, which code isn't. So code is actually, code to some extent is IP. But the actual IP of a company is the data, not the algorithmic. So it's a trade-off, and you have to clarify this. We do this transparently, and most of our customers have no problem with it. A few words about the future. As I already mentioned, as you have seen now, so GitHub Copilot is here. It has support for multiple IDEs. It works really, really good, supports me on this tactical level. not only in Go, not only in Docker, but many, many more technologies. I'm very often very surprised how effectively it helps me in Terraform and things I do. And future versions, GitHub has announced Copilot X, which will technically now be based on GPT-4, which is now the very new AI model from OpenAI, which also ChatGPT will be based on soon. And it will offer some more advanced features. Like one thing is you can mark code and it will tell you what this code does. You can also have things like you can mark code and describe that this code has a bug and what you expect. And it will show you where your bug is actually, or at least try to support you here. And also restructuring, like much more powerful than your IDE is capable to do. In the IDE, you can mark a block and say, I would like to have this as a method, and it will be refactored. But we talk about restructuring, which is broader, and this is where GitHub Copilot will support us. But also just marking code and see written text describing what this code does is also really, really nice and helpful, especially if you take some code from some other developer, undocumented, and you simply don't see what it's intended to do. And Copilot will support you here. So Copilot, we started using it like 1 year ago, and we received, I don't know, 7 or 8 updates, all of them having small improvements, and Copilot X will be a big update. And will bring many more features. So our developers are really like, wow, let's really happy. Yeah, I'm also really, really curious which improvements we will have in the future. So it's evolving, and if you're using Copilot, you're participating in those improvements and changes. That's it. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. So Nick, do we have any open questions?
No, there was one earlier regarding GDPR, but I think you answered it. So
yes,
give them 30 seconds though, because if they're asking any questions, they may be behind.
Yeah, we also must be aware that we are, as I said, like 30 seconds in a delay. So we better wait at least 30 seconds for questions plus the time that the question needs to be written. Yeah, and I could, for fun, continue coding. I mean, it's really fun because you see, it knows that what I need to do next. Yeah, I just need to tab, and the coding is done. Yeah, I need this. Let's do it. It's fun. It's really fun. And so I'm adding this, and we have this sort by ID already, so it's happy. Oh no, we don't. Which, by the way, is stupid. Let's remove it. Okay, and so my code is done, and let me just test the sort by first name function. Let's add it. Let's add a test case. Yeah, come on. Yeah, and here it is. So it expects that the first name is Alice. So let's run the test. And it's not true. And this is funny. This is something that happens. Our first name is actually Jane. If you take a look on the generated data, so we have John, Jane, John. Okay, so it's basically Jane. Let's test it again, and now it's happy. So this is something that happens. It found somehow this other name. Yeah, we need to fix it here as well, and that's it. So you see, really working. test sort by last name. So it really comes up with suggestions it needs to do. So do, and yeah, so it's good. I mean, one note here, it always makes sense to take a look on the code you see here. It truly can be wrong. This happens. So it will, if you have absolutely no clue about the technology you're using, you need to have some basic understanding what's going on here in order to judge if this code is what you want. So you surely run into danger getting some wrong code. Happens. It's not perfect. Like maybe, I don't know, 95% is good and maybe 5% is giving you faulty code. Happens. So this is the big challenge. If you're doing a live demo, you never know what you will, which kind of suggestions you will get. Every time I tried this demo, I got a little bit different result because the suggestions were a little bit different. The result, the end result is always the same. It's always working service. But the way how details are working is always a little bit different because the suggestions are not deterministic. Every time you get some differences, right? Good. So, Nick, we have no further questions, right?
No questions, I don't think.
Okay, good. Then we can close down. I wish a nice day, everybody. And yeah, see you soon. Thank you and bye.